In this video for section 5.5, we're going to be graphing linear inequalities. So this is graphing lines, but there's a couple of extra steps that you need to do when you have an inequality. As you might remember, an inequality has a less than or greater than symbol in it instead of an equal sign. So the first thing is that the line depends on whether our symbol is less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. In that case, we use a solid line. If it's less than or greater than, without the little line underneath that means equal to, then we used a dash line. And the dash line means that the line itself is not included. Then what this does is it divides the coordinate plane into what are called two half planes. So you can think of the line as dividing our xy axis into two parts. What we're going to do is choose a test point, and the test point that we're going to usually want to use is 0, 0. We have to make sure that the point is not on the line. So if 0, 0 is not on the line, then we're going to use that. And we plug these coordinates into the inequality, our original inequality. If the statement is true, then that means 0, 0 is included, and so we shade over the point 0, 0. If it's false, then that means 0, 0 is not included, so we shade the other side of the line. That does not include 0, 0. So, we're going to do example 1 from the textbook. It says to graph 2x minus 3y greater than or equal to 6. So what I like to do first is identify whether my line is going to be solid or dotted. In this case, this is greater than or equal to, so that means it's going to be a solid line. And I usually like to write that down. If it's a solid line, generally you'll remember it. The trick is remembering if you have to put in a dotted line, because putting in the solid line is probably going to be your default thing. So solid line here. And then my next step is to graph the line. So I'm going to graph the line. I have x and y on the same side of the equation here, which means I'm going to use the cover-up method, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago. So cover up one of the variables. So I'm going to start by covering up the x. My equation is negative 3y. Now I'm thinking of this inequality symbol right now as an equal sign when I'm graphing the line. So 2x minus 3y equals 6. Divide, and that gives me y equals negative 2. So remember, that's a point that I plot on the y-axis, y equals negative 2. And then I'm going to erase that and cover up the y. So I have 2x equals 6, and that means that x equals 3. So I mark that on the x-axis. And now I can draw my line. It's going to look something like that. And then my last step is to determine which side of the line should be shaded. So I'm going to plug in 0, 0. And we're going to see the advantage of plugging in 0, 0 over other points in a second. So I'm plugging into my original inequality here with the greater than or equal to symbol. So that's going to be 2 times 0 minus 3 times 0 greater than or equal to 6. And the advantages of using 0 is that 0 times anything is 0, so it makes the math in here pretty straightforward. 2 times 0 is 0, 3 times 0 is 0, 0 minus 0 is 0. You can use a different test point if you want. You should get the graph correct either way. 0 is just a little bit easier to do the math on. So what I have here is 0 greater than or equal to 6. And I want to think about, is this true or false? Is 0 greater than 6? Well, no, it's not. It's smaller than 6. And so this is false, which means that I shade the side that does not contain 0, 0. And the other advantage of using 0, 0 as a test point is that it's very easy to find on the graph because it's the point where the x and y coordinates cross. So I'm shading the side that does not include that point, which means it's going to be this side over here. So that's what my graph should look like. So next you should look at checkpoint problem number 1. Do this in your notes, check your answer, and then move on with the video. Now we're going to talk about horizontal and vertical lines, and these are even easier than the types of lines that we just did. So if we have a horizontal or vertical line, we don't actually need to do a test point, we can just think about numbers that are less than or greater than. So for a vertical line, numbers that are greater than x are going to be on the right side. So if you just think about the x-axis, if x equals a, numbers greater than a are going to be on the right, so you would shade on the right. Numbers less than a would be on the left, so if it's x less than a, you shade to the left. Same thing for a horizontal line. So you have your horizontal line. If it's greater than b, it's going to be shading above the line because values on the y-axis, greater than b will be above the line, and for less than b, you shade below the line. So we're going to do example 3. It says to graph each inequality. Our first one is y is less than or equal to -3. So again, I need to remember to check if it's going to be solid or dotted. This one's going to be solid. So I'm going to put a mark on -3 on the y-axis, and then draw a solid line through that point. And since it's less than -3, numbers less than -3 are going to be below. So my shading is going to be below the line. For part B, this is x greater than 2. Now this one is a dotted or dashed line. So I'm going to mark 2 on the x-axis. I'm going to draw a dotted line through that point. And numbers that are greater than 2, well, they're going to be to the right on the x-axis, so I'm going to shade on the right-hand side. So next you should look at checkpoint problem number 3. Do this in your notes, check your answer, and then go on to the homework.